All right, so we have 2 units, this unit and one more, for new material this year. Macy had the question, is this gonna be a short unit? Actually, it is. There's not a whole lot to the notes. There's a couple main things, and it's more keeping the vocabulary straight and understanding like how things are kind of related and involved. And so I'm not saying that this unit is easy. It is a little specific and it is a little bit technical. So last unit we had adaptations over time. That was kind of our bridge between earth science and our life science. Now we are 100% going to end the year with life science. This is also something, as you go into biology as a sophomore, a lot of what we're going to talk about in the next 2 units, you guys will cover again in even more detail. So a lot of times I have sophomores come back and be like, oh my gosh, like you were right, it was helpful, like the things that we already learned. So you're getting a foundation for that right now, right? And so the better that you are involved in paying attention and understand this now, when you get to it in biology, you'll just be like, oh yeah, like you'll get refreshed and like you'll be able to pick up and kind of go forward with Mr. Trainer, right? So this is stuff that's gonna come back. It's not just like one and done kind of thing. So I don't want you to be scared. This is not health class. I kind of mentioned this last unit. We are not getting into the specifics of human reproduction. What we're looking at is at the cellular level. So we're not talking an uncomfortable health class situation, I know, oh my gosh. But we are gonna have to say like asexual and sexual as we're talking about the type of reproduction that organisms use. And so like that's as bad as it gets. We will have to say sperm and egg cells, because those are, they play an important part. And I get it, like, it's like, oh my gosh, like, do we really have to say this? But you'll get used to it, and it's not gonna be so awkward. I try not to make you guys have to say those words more. I'll say them, you guys just have to hear them. Don't tune me out, blah, 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 right? It's not that bad, okay? I promise. So we're gonna really be looking at cellular reproduction. And so obviously we know that an organism does not live forever. There is no immortal organisms. And so for that species to continue, there has to be a transfer of information to create a new offspring that can continue on. So we're passing on that genetic information from one generation to the next. And this is necessary for the continuation of every species. Obviously, if you don't pass on the genetic information, there will be no offspring, and if there's no offspring, then there's going to be no subsequent or future generations. Like, it just stops, okay? And so this can occur in 2 main ways. There's something called asexual reproduction, where you get an organism that reproduces genetically identical offspring. Genetically identical is a clone. It is like a photocopy. It is an exact replica of the parent. Notice how I said parent, not parents. Parent. And then there's sexual reproduction, and this is where you have 2 organisms that produce genetically similar offspring. This is how we all got here. We had 2 parents. We got half of our information from mom, half of our information from dad, and that combination or sorting of the genes basically is how, all of us got here, right? If you have siblings, if they're full siblings, then you have the same mother and you have the same father. They also have the same parents, right, as you. So that means that you're going to share similar DNA. Is it exact? No, and we'll talk about like why that is. There's a lot of, I think of like a deck of cards. And if you're getting half from mom and half from dad, and then they shuffle them out and they give you a hand, your hand is going to be different than your siblings, right? You're going to have similarities because you're getting from the same deck, but what you actually have, or what actually shows for you, is not going to be exactly the same as your full siblings. Yes?
So how does like identical twins work?
lot of questions this unit that we're gonna get to, so I'm gonna hold off, we'll get to that. And I think that you guys are actually, I'm kind of looking forward to these 2 units, because usually it does make you ask a lot of really good questions. If you guys have questions that I haven't been asked before, I will write them down and make sure we cover them. But after we do our state test, we're gonna come back and look at a lot of different things, because it is kind of cool. It involves us, and so usually we get a little bit more excited about it than like, okay, there was a volcano. Like, you know what I mean? Not that it isn't amazing that a volcano can happen, but you know, we kind of are a little bit worried about ourselves. It's like, oh, so what about this? And what about this? And what if I had this? And so these next 2 units do raise a lot of cool questions. And there's some important things that I think that we need to discuss that really aren't on the state test. So after the state test, remember how I said we're skipping some things? We're gonna come back to a lot of things that aren't gonna help you on the test, but it's gonna help you be more well-rounded and understand how the science stuff relates. And, you know, so just kind of be aware of that. Yes.
Can the first thing we do is watch a tsunami video?
Oh my gosh, Zach, you're gonna just be the end of me. Okay, and so there's many reasons that cells divide. The first one is the reproduction of new organisms. So for new organisms to be possible, we have to start as a single cell starting to divide, right? Are there any other things that you can think of why you might need to make new cells if it doesn't have anything to do with like reproduction or anything like that? Why might we need some new cells?
So the species don't go extinct.
Okay, but that has to do with reproduction. So nothing to do with reproduction. Think daily life.
Repair.
Yeah, so has anybody here ever gotten a cut? Ever gotten burnt, maybe? Ever gotten a bruise?
Yes.
So if we didn't have the ability for our cells to make new cells, then those cuts would never heal. Right? Those bones would never heal. So any injuries would never go away.
These would never heal.
They would never heal. So every injury, boo-boo, scrape that you've ever had, you would still have, right? Anything else that you can think of? What do you think, Zach?
Aiden.
Or Zach, sorry. Aiden.
What if we had like a
As soon
whole
as I
bunch
said
of
it.
those? Could we just have like healing powers?
I mean, like, if they went into, like, overdrive, you know what I mean, and, like, did, like, usually, like, healing is a slower process. Like, if you had, like, mutant cells that would, like, heal super fast, maybe. What else besides, repairing ourselves?
Replacing dead cells.
Yes, there's a normal life cycle, so we have to replace the ones that have naturally gone through their use. Anything else? Did you guys all be born the same size you are right now?
No.
So we just had 2 baby horses born. One is like a month old now, and it's crazy because I swear every day he grows like an inch. Like, he started down here, and like now when I go and grab him, like he's all the way like above my ribs. It was like below my belly button, now at my belly button. Now it's like, holy smokes, he's gonna be like at my neck before I know it. Like, it seems like he's growing an inch every day, getting bigger. So did we all go through that massive growth? Sure, right? Like, none of us were born the size we are now, right? So those are some of the things we'll talk about. So growth, repair, bad break, right? And so there's a couple different types of cell division that we're going to focus on, and you guys, a lot of you were saying these words during the flashcard part: mitosis and meiosis. Sometimes you'll hear people say meiosis. More common is meiosis. But if you look at the word meiosis, you see the word me in it, right? Meiosis or meiosis is how we all got here. This process refers to our reproduction, our cells that help us produce new offspring. Yes.
How do you say them again?
Mitosis
Mitosis.
and meiosis.
Meiosis.
Okay. So, and we'll talk about some ways to remember these. Meiosis only deals with sexual reproduction. So like the egg and the sperm cells. That's it. Mitosis deals with everything else. And notice how it says, this is how we got here. So if you say meiosis, it's what made me. It's how I got here, right? And so if you were personally saying that, it's what made me, meiosis is that process.
Me. Oh, that's so smart.
All right, and so there is this amazing stuff called deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, and it has the instructions for all of our cells' activities, all right? And so at certain times, like there are certain instructions that are turned on and turned off, and so that's how our cells know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and all that.
What was the word you said, like right before DNA?
Deoxyribonucleic acid.
That's a long word. So we have to remember that.
That's why we call it DNA.
Okay.
Yep.
Make sure we didn't have to.
Don't, yeah, and you have to spell it right too. Okay, so every organism is made of cells, right? And you guys should have talked about cells a little bit in 6th grade. Yeah. So like the parts of the cell, mitochondria, or the mighty mitochondria, ribosomes, right? And so each cell has tiny little things called organelles, and those organelles have a very specific function for the cell. We're not going to get into all of that. You will a lot more in biology as sophomores again. But just realize, so we have an organism. The organism is made of all these cells, right? Inside the cell, we have this thing called the nucleus, and the nucleus is where we have the chromosomes, and then the chromosomes are made of all of these structures that are the DNA structures.
Whoa.
Okay, so we have kind of this progression, right? And so cells have these organelles, or little organs, and one of them is the nucleus. That is where the chromosomes are found. Okay, so you can kind of see our body's made of cells. The cells have a nucleus. Inside the nucleus, we have this area that contains the chromosomes, and then the DNA is found in the chromosomes. Yes?
Are you going to learn how to bring dinosaurs back using DNA, like in Jurassic Park?
No. But, I mean, it's this understanding that, help them kind of fake do it. Not exactly,
Blank
but.
is found. Wait, where's that at?
Okay.
Oh, wait.
And so chromosomes, and this is one of your vocab terms again.
Did you get it?
These are the thread-like structures located inside the nucleus of animal and plant cells.
Inside the what?
And so each chromosome is made of proteins and a single molecule of deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA. DNA.
That is so cool.
And so chromosomes usually look like this X structure, and they are kind of lightly held in place at this thing called a centromere. It's just kind of like where they connect. Okay? And so DNA basically contains the instructions for each cell. So we have a lot of different types of cells. We have heart cells, we have liver cells, we have skin cells. Brain cells, we have sex cells, right? If you're a girl, you have egg cells. If you're a boy, you have sperm cells. So each type of cell has the instructions to be that type of cell, right? And so, and we'll get into that a little bit more. And so cells are going to have to divide or reproduce using mitosis. So we're going to focus first on mitosis. And this happens for several reasons. Every cell in our body is called a body cell. The only ones that have their own special name are these ones called the gametes, which are also known as the sex cells. Again, the egg and the sperm cell. So all of our cells in our entire body are called the gamete, or called the body cells, except those gametes. Okay, so gametes just kind of the scientific name for those sex cells. I know I keep saying these words, I'm so sorry. Your faces are funny. And so we're not going to talk about human reproduction right now with mitosis. Mitosis is for growth. It is for helping that body to get bigger, all right? And so this is why when you guys are going through growth spurts, a lot of times you get achy. A lot of times you get really hungry, you get really sleepy. Like I could always tell when my son was getting ready to go through a growth spurt because he would get so tired. Even more than hungry, he would just like want to crash out all the time. And the next thing you know, he grew like 2 inches. It's like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. Like, he's going through a growth spurt. So, we have the idea of growth. Also, like you guys said, we break, we get cut, we get burnt, we get hurt. So you have to be able to repair cells, and mitosis is what does that. They're getting freaked out in here because we're talking a little bit about reproduction. Yes, so we have to say some of those uncomfortable words.
Won't be long.
I know, that's why I'm like, oh.
Real class.
That's why I'm like, this is not health class. We are not getting into that.
Right there.
So we said that things that, the cells that get worn out, that get damaged, or just at the end of their natural life cycle, because obviously a cell's not gonna live forever. So since it's not gonna live forever, once it dies, it needs replaced. And so mitosis will take care of that. Here's something that's really nasty. So we slough off dead skin cells all the time.
Right now?
We don't really think about it, but we do, okay? And so they're just going through their natural progression, their natural life cycle. So at some point, you need to replace those or you'd end up with no skin, right? And so obviously that doesn't happen. We lose about 1 million of these a day, which is about 9 pounds a year of dead skin cells. So it's kind of nice it doesn't happen all at once, because that'd be really nasty. But like as we're all walking, like that's just skin cells just falling
So if you
off,
like
right?
hold your arm there for a long time.
This is why we need to wash our sheets. This is why we need to wear clean clothes, right? So that, you know, you're not constantly like wearing all the, one of the reasons why you're not wearing all those dead skin cells around all the time or rolling around sleeping in them. Ugh. So maybe go home and wash your sheets and pillowcases. I just did this weekend. Made me happy. Okay. Also, we don't have this obviously, but some animals are able to regenerate parts of their bodies if like they get severed. Lizard tails.
Leopard gecko.
The gecko.
Yeah, leopard gecko.
And we also know this is a special category. Some organisms will use mitosis for reproduction. This is a special category of organisms that only use the process of asexual reproduction, meaning there is one parent, there is a basically photocopied version of an offspring that is going to be identical genetically to the parent. Yes?
What if it has a mutation? Wouldn't it be different genetically?
So mutations kind of change everything, right? So like that's kind of a random thing. So if it's supposed to be genetically identical, even with the mutation we say it's genetically identical, and then you would identify, okay, well there was this mutation, right? But don't go into it thinking like it's going to be different than the parent. In your mind, you need to have the idea, it is the exact same as the single parent. And there's some advantages to this. It's actually quicker. If the animal, the parent organism is healthy and stable, then the offspring should be healthy and stable. There's also some disadvantages, and we'll talk about that as well. But there is a very specific group that uses mitosis for reproduction. Do humans?
No.
No. Right? Do a lot of the organisms that were around?
No.
No. Think about livestock. Think about cats and dogs and all of the, like most of the animals that were around use meiosis, or that sexual reproduction where it takes 2 parents. Okay? Mitosis is very unique, and we'll look at a few examples of organisms that will reproduce using mitosis.
Isn't it like a type of moss, one of them?
Moss?
No.
Yeah. Or like something like that.
Possibly. Like I don't know all of the organisms that reproduce using asexual methods.
What about a tree?
No, because you need to have, like even like plants, they have to be pollinated and fertilized, like with, you know, the opposite
It's okay.
kind of counterparts, right?
It's where to go. Right here.
There are some plants that do use, like strawberry plants can reproduce asexually. Potatoes, like you can do a cutting.
That's weird.
Anytime you do a cutting and like replant, and it will make a new.
My mom does that.
Your mom does that?
Yeah.
Nice. That's using asexual. So some plants do, some plants don't use this method. And we'll look at a few examples, for sure. Let's see. Yeah, so the new, no, let's stop here.
Oh wait,
We'll stop here.
can I write that down?
Sure, if you wanna cheat ahead.
Cheating. It is not